Hi, hello, and welcome to my channel Easy Ecology with Bud. I am Anusha S. and I am a postgraduate degree holder in M Pharmacy in the Department of Pharmacology. With this channel, I try discussing some basic concepts in pharmacology which will be of use for students like you. So let us begin our today's video by having a brief recap of our previous video where we discussed about the definition of receptor, functions of receptor, criteria for classification of receptor, and two important categories of receptors, ion channels and G-protein coupled receptors. If you have not watched my previous video, I have shared the link in the description below. If you're watching my video without subscribing, I suggest you to subscribe so that you will be notified whenever I post a new video. So let us move on to today's class, kinase linked receptor. So these receptors are family of large group of receptors that are going to respond to ligands that are mainly proteins. So these proteins can either be a growth factor or it can be hormones such as insulin. If we see the structure of these receptors, there are three main parts in these receptors. First one is the extracellular ligand binding domain. So this extracellular domain is very large and it is where the ligand is going to bind. The next is the transmembrane spanning helix, which is going to link the extracellular domain with the intracellular domain. The third part is the intracellular domain, which is responsible for the enzymatic activity of the receptor. So either it will have intrinsic enzymatic activity, that is, it is going to have an enzyme such as kinase within the receptor, or it is having the ability to bind to a nearby enzyme such as kinase with the help of its adapter protein. So you have to remember that this entire receptor should have enzymatic activity. So either the enzymatic activity will be within the receptor or it should at least have the ability to associate with an enzyme with the help of protein. Now, if you see the functions of this receptor and the signaling pathway, it is involved in cell division, growth, differentiation, tissue repair, apoptosis, and immune responses. So, what are the types of the enzyme linked receptors? So, based on the intracellular domain, these receptors are going to be divided into three types. First is the tyrosine kinase. Now, if in the intracellular domain there are some residues like the tyrosine residues, and if these are going to be phosphorylated by enzymes such as kinase, which is present within the receptor, then it is called a tyrosine kinase receptor. So, the ligands that are binding to such type of receptor will be epidermal growth factor and nerve growth factor, and also insulin. So, insulin is going to bind to receptor tyrosine kinase family. Next is receptor serine threonine kinases. So when the intracellular domain is going to have a serine or a threonine residue instead of tyrosine residue, and if it is going to be phosphorylated by an enzyme such as kinase found within the receptor, then it is going to be called as receptor serine threonine kinase. And the example or the ligand that is going to bind to this receptor is transforming growth factor. The last type is cytokine receptors. So this receptor is going to be very different from the other two types because here this receptor is not going to have intrinsic enzyme activity, meaning it is not going to have an enzyme within the receptor, yet it is having the ability to attract enzymes that are found nearby such as Janus kinase. So it will attract Janus kinase which is found nearby the receptor, and it will bring the enzyme to phosphorylate the tyrosine residues which is found in the receptor. So this type is called cytokine receptors, and the ligands that are going to bind here is cytokines such as interferons. So these are the main types of receptors based on the intracellular domain. Next is the general mechanism. So whenever the ligand is going to bind to the extracellular domain, that is the extracellular ligand binding domain, this receptor is going to undergo dimerization. So now there will be two receptors. These two receptors will be having tyrosine residues within them, and they will be also having enzymes to phosphorylate these residues. But this is going to happen in a cross phosphorylation mechanism. That is, the tyrosine which is present on one receptor will be phosphorylated by the kinase which is present on the other receptor. So this is called cross phosphorylation. When a ligand is going to bind to the extracellular ligand binding domain, then cross phosphorylation of tyrosine residues occur. This is going to attract a protein called as SH2 domain protein. So once SH2 domain protein is attracted by the phosphorylated tyrosine residues, this SH2 domain protein also will be phosphorylated. Now what happens after the phosphorylation of SH2 domain protein will depend upon what kind of receptor it is. If it is a phospholipase C, then like I discussed in previous class, it will be breaking the phospholipids into inositol triphosphate, that is IP3. This IP3 will move into sarcoplasmic reticulum and bring the calcium out. So this is if it is a phospholipase C. Now if it is a phosphotyrosine containing protein, then transcription factor will go to the nucleus and it will suppress or induce the expression of particular genes. So all you have to remember is that the ligand will bind to the ligand binding domain of the receptor, there will be dimerization of the receptor, and there will be cross phosphorylation of the tyrosine residues, because of which SH2 domain protein will be activated and phosphorylated. After that, there will be series of proteins that will be activated and phosphorylated. After that, they will be going into the nucleus and they will be inducing or repressing the transcription of the genes. So this is the basic mechanism, and based on this there are two types of important signaling pathways. The first pathway is the RAS-RAF MAP kinase pathway, which is very important in cell division, growth and differentiation, and the second is JAK-STAT pathway, which is very important in the inflammation. So we will be discussing in detail about these two signaling pathways. So first is the RAS-RAF pathway. So for this RAS-RAF pathway, this pathway will initiate when growth factors and mitogens are going to bind to the extracellular ligand binding domain. So when a growth factor or a mitogen is binding to the extracellular ligand binding domain, like I said before, there will be receptor dimerization, and once the receptor dimerization is there, then there will be cross phosphorylation of the tyrosine residues. There will be activation of a SH2 domain protein such as GRB2, and this GRB2 will be activating a protein called as RAS. So this is very specific to this pathway. Up to the activation of SH2 domain protein and phosphorylation of SH2 domain protein, it is common for all enzyme linked pathway. But what happens after the SH2 will be depending on the particular signaling pathway. So since it is the RAS-RAF pathway, after the SH2 domain protein is phosphorylated and activated, RAS, that is the rat sarcoma protein will be activated. So this is the proto-oncogenic product, and this will be activated like the G protein, that is by the exchange of GTP for GDP, RAS will be activated. Once RAS is activated, three serine threonine protein kinases will be activated. It's like a sequence, and these three sequence proteins will be activated. So these are RAF, MEK, and MAP kinase. So these three sequence of proteins will be activated, and these three proteins will be going inside the nucleus and they will be promoting gene transcription. So that is RAS-RAF pathway, where there will be activation of RAS and then three series of serine threonine protein kinases, that is RAF, MEK and MAP kinase, going inside the nucleus and promoting the transcription. So these are going to be involved in some diseases such as tumors, inflammation, as well as in the formation of atherosclerosis. The next is the JAK-STAT pathway. So in JAK-STAT pathway, the ligands are going to be cytokines, growth hormones, prolactins and interferons. So this pathway, this JAK-STAT pathway is having a difference from the MAP kinase pathway, is that it is not going to have intrinsic enzymatic activity, but it is having the ability to attract Janus kinase. So whenever cytokines, growth factors or prolactin is going to bind to the receptor, it is going to attract Janus kinase which is nearby. So when Janus kinase is going to be attracted, there will be phosphorylation of the Janus kinase, and when Janus kinase is phosphorylated, it will be again activating a SH2 domain protein. So the SH2 domain protein here is STAT. So STAT will also be getting phosphorylated, and this phosphorylated STAT will dimerize. It will go inside the nucleus and then it will initiate the transcription and form proteins that are responsible for the activity. So here you have to remember that the hormones will bind to the extracellular domain. It will induce receptor dimerization, which will activate the intracellular domain to bind Janus kinase. This activated Janus kinase will phosphorylate the tyrosine residues and it will be attracting STAT. STAT will get dimerized and it will go to the nucleus and it will do the remaining function. So that is about Janus kinase and STAT pathway. Now, you have to remember that this enzyme linked receptors are going to show their responses in a very few minutes to few hours, and their desensitization is big by internalization and degradation in lysosomes and also by downregulation of the receptors. So, did you know is that the first kinase inhibitor was imatinib, which was used for chronic myeloid leukemia, and it is considered as the breakthrough drug for the treatment of this disease. So you have to remember that first kinase inhibitor was imatinib. So now let us move on to the next type of receptor, that is the receptors regulating gene expression. So nuclear hormone receptors, they comprise of a superfamily of about 48 receptors, and these receptors are mainly helpful in functions such as reproduction, development and metabolism. If you see the ligands that are going to bind to it, androgens, estrogens, progesterones, glucocorticoids, thyroid hormones, vitamin D, bile acids, lipids are all going to bind to such type of receptor. So this receptor is very different from the other receptors that I discussed with you. It is that this receptor is going to be an intracellular receptor. That is, it is not going to be on the membrane, but instead it will be either in the cytoplasm or it will be inside the nucleus. And the ligand that is going to be binding to this receptor should have the ability to cross the lipid, because since the receptor is inside the cell, that is in the cytoplasm and in the nucleus, the ligand also should be having the ability to cross the lipid layer. And generally, since this receptor is having the ability to bind to the DNA, in its resting state, it will be attached to a protein called heat shock protein, which will prevent it from binding to the DNA. But whenever an agonist is going to bind to this receptor, that heat shock protein will be dissociated, allowing the receptor to bind to the DNA. So that you have to remember. Now let us see the structure of the nuclear hormone receptor. This nuclear hormone receptors will be having 4 important domains. First one is the N-terminal domain, next one is the C-terminal domain. Now there will be 4 different domains in this single polypeptide chain. First one is the AF1, which is called as the activation region. This AF1 is the region where transcription factors will be binding, and this binding will be in a ligand independent way. That is, without the ligand also transcription factors can bind to this region. Next is the DNA binding domain. So in DNA binding domain is having zinc fingers. That is, it's like an amino acid which is having zinc in it, and the major ability of this DNA binding domain with the help of the zinc finger is that it will be able to bind to specific sites in the DNA. That is, it will be able to bind to hormone response elements with the help of the zinc fingers that is present in the DNA binding domain, and also it will help in the receptor dimerization. So it has 2 important functions. One is receptor dimerization and second is recognition of the hormone response elements. Next is the hinge region. This hinge region helps in dimerization as well as in the intercellular trafficking of the receptor. That is, in the internalization of the receptor also, this hinge region is going to help. Next is the C-terminal. In the C-terminal, there is a ligand binding domain where the ligand, that is the agonist and the antagonist, will bind. And finally, there is the AF2 region where the co-activator or the co-repressor will be binding. So this is the brief structure where there is an AF1 where the transcription factors bind. Next is the DNA binding domain, which can help in the recognition of the hormone response elements as well as in the binding of the in the dimerization process. Next is the hinge region, which helps in dimerization and intracellular trafficking of the receptor. Then the ligand binding domain, which binds the ligand, and finally the AF2 region where the co-repressor or the co-activators bind. Now, if you see the signaling, whenever the hormone is going to bind to the ligand binding domain of the receptor, the heat shock protein will be released, because heat shock protein will be preventing the receptor to bind to the DNA normal stage. But when agonist binds to the ligand binding domain, this heat shock protein will be released. This receptor is going to dimerize. It can be either a homodimer or a heterodimer. So once the receptor is going to dimerize, the DNA binding domain will fold into necessary configuration, which will help this receptor move inside the nucleus. So first it after folding, it will be binding some co-activators or co-repressors. Then it will go inside the DNA. It will be binding to specific hormone response elements, after which either the mRNA will be synthesized or repressed, and the synthesized mRNA will go to ribosomes. It will form proteins, and then there will be activity. But this transduction mechanism is the slowest when compared to all the receptors. The transduction mechanism is going to take hours. So you have to remember this entire mechanism. So if you see this diagram, you can see that there is a carboxy terminus as well as a N terminus. So near the carboxy terminus, there is a ligand binding domain, which is the steroid binding domain. So in this ligand binding domain, the steroid will bind. Once it binds, the heat shock protein will be removed. Now, with the help of the hinge region and the with the help of the DNA binding domain, the receptor can undergo dimerization. Before that, with the help of the hinge region, it can come inside. That is, I have already told you, hinge region helps in the intercellular trafficking of the receptor. So with the help of the hinge region, the receptor is going to come inside the nucleus, and once it comes inside the nucleus, what happens? With the help of the hinge and the DNA binding domain, it will undergo dimerization, and once it undergoes dimerization, co-activators and co-repressors will bind to the AF2 region, and once it binds to AF2 region, with the help of the zinc fingers which is present in the DNA binding domain, it will bind to hormone response elements in the nucleus, and because of which there will be transcription. That is, DNA will be converted into mRNA, so there will be transcription, and this mRNA will go inside ribosomes and it will form protein. So this is the entire mechanism. Now, what is the function of this co-activator and co-repressor is that only if the co-activator and the agonist is going to bind, the gene transcription will stimulate. But instead of the co-activator, if a co-repressor is going to bind, then the activation do not occur. So that you have to understand. So based on this, there are two types of nuclear receptors. So the first one is the nuclear receptor, which will be present in the cytoplasm, and its dimerization will be mainly homodimer, and the ligand that it is going to bind will be mainly endocrine in nature, that is steroid hormones such as androgen and estrogen, and mineralocorticoids and glucocorticoids. So that is the first type of receptors. So the ligands will be androgen, estrogen, progesterone, mineralocorticoid and glucocorticoids. If you see the class 2 receptors, these class 2 receptors will be generally present in the nucleus, and they are going to form heterodimers. So that you have to remember. The ligands that are going to bind to these receptors will be retinoids, retinoic acid, thyroid hormone, pregnein, and some drugs like rosiglitazone and pioglitazone with the help of PPAR. So with this, we have come to the end of receptors. In the next class, I will be discussing about some other topics that I have left in pharmacodynamics, and straight we will be going to pharmacokinetics. So if you like this video, like, share and comment, and do share it with your friends so that I will be motivated to make new videos in future. Thank you.